From the bustling port city of Avalon Bay, an emotional story unfolds. 5 innocent little girls, all under 9, lost their parents in a tragic ferry accident. But what came next was even worse. After the burial, their own family threw them away like unwanted trash. Nobody wanted 5 orphans. They were completely alone, abandoned, with nowhere to go. Then a broken, childless woman made an impossible decision. She adopted not one but all 5 of these forgotten children. Even though everyone around her called her crazy. 20 years later, these 5 girls did something so unimaginable, it left the woman and the entire city in absolute disbelief. Clara was 35 when life hit her hardest. For 12 years, she and her husband tried everything, seeing countless doctors and hoping for a child. But nothing worked. She felt like her world was crumbling. And just when she thought she couldn't take it anymore, her husband did something that shattered her world. "You're empty," her husband said one day, his voice cold. "What good is a wife who cannot build a family?" With those words, her heart shattered. He then divorced her and married another woman. Clara felt like she had lost everything. Her heart ached and tears filled her eyes each night as she prayed, asking, "Why can't I be like other women? Why can't I have a family?" Clara was a librarian, and she loved children with all her heart. Every day, she smiled and poured her soul into reading stories to other people's kids. But when the library closed, she walked home to a silent apartment. The stillness inside was unbearable, each empty room echoing the loneliness she couldn't escape. One bright morning, Clara volunteered at a city shelter for children. It was a somber place, and the air felt heavy with sorrow. As Clara walked through the doorway, her eyes fell on 5 little girls huddled together on a worn-out sofa. Their faces were pale, their eyes full of fear. "Who are those girls?" Clara asked a caregiver, her voice gentle. The woman sighed deeply. "Their parents died in the ferry accident. Their family doesn't want them. No one wants to adopt 5 children all at once. They've been here for months." Clara looked back at the girls. The oldest, Sophia, was 9, and she held her baby sister, Dahlia, close. Maya, 7, sat beside them, trying to smile as if hiding her pain. The twins, Isla and Ivy, only 5, sat huddled together, looking identical in their sadness. But it was baby Dahlia, only 3, who broke Clara's heart. Her eyes were so big and so full of sadness. In that moment, something shifted in Clara's heart. "I want to adopt them," she said, her voice shaking with emotion. The caregiver's eyes went wide. "All 5? But Miss Clara, you're not married. You don't have much money. Are you sure?" Clara looked at the 5 girls again. They needed a mother. She needed children. "Yes," she said, her voice stronger now. "All 5. They are sisters. They belong together." Clara brought the girls home to her small apartment. The first night, all 5 huddled together in Clara's bed, trembling. As the room grew dark, Sophia whispered, "Are you really going to keep us?" Clara leaned down and tucked them in. "Forever and always," she promised. "You are my daughters now." That night, the apartment was filled with the sounds of sniffles and soft breathing. It was the first time the girls felt safe. But it wasn't easy. Clara worked hard, waking up early for her library job. After work, she would return home to cook, clean, and help with homework. Some nights she was so tired she would fall asleep standing up. But every morning she woke to the sound of laughter and little feet. Their love made every difficult moment worth it. People in Avalon Bay talked. "Look at that woman with all those children who aren't even hers. She's crazy. How could she possibly manage?" Clara heard their whispers but refused to listen. She knew love was stronger than anything anyone could say. Money was tight. Clara bought clothes from second-hand shops, and the girls wore hand-me-downs. Their meals were simple, pasta, soups, whatever they could afford. But they never complained. They had a bond that not even the richest families could match. As the years passed, Clara saw something special in each of her daughters. Sophia had a sharp mind for numbers and strategy. Maya was a force of nature on the football pitch. The twins, Isla and Ivy, both dreamed of medicine, Isla with a nurse's compassion, Ivy with a doctor's focus. And little Dahlia had a voice like an angel and a will of iron, destined for the stage or the courtroom. Clara worked extra jobs to nurture their talents. She enrolled Sophia in junior business clubs, signed Maya up for a local football academy, bought medical books for the twins, and paid for singing lessons for Dahlia. She was always exhausted, but never complained. "My girls have big dreams," she would say. When Maya turned 18, she played in a national championship. The stadium was packed. With precision and power, she scored 4 goals, a stunning performance that left scouts in awe. After the game, a representative from a premier European club approached Clara. "We want to sign your daughter," he said. Tears filled Clara's eyes for the first time in years, tears of pure joy. One by one, all of Clara's daughters achieved their dreams. Sophia started her own tech company and was a millionaire by 25. Ivy became a renowned surgeon, while Isla became the head nurse at a major hospital. Dahlia became a celebrated human rights lawyer and a gospel singer whose albums topped the charts. On Clara's 60th birthday, her daughters led her outside, her eyes closed. When she opened them, she gasped. Before her stood a beautiful, modern home overlooking the Avalon Bay, with a sparkling swimming pool and a garden bursting with flowers. A sign at the gate read, "Clara's Haven." "We bought this for you, Mama," Maya said, tears streaming down her face. "You gave us everything when you had nothing." Clara stood speechless, overwhelmed with love. 2 years later, something even more amazing happened. All 5 daughters found love and decided to have one grand, collective wedding. The ceremony was a breathtaking event in a glass pavilion by the bay. Hundreds of guests gathered, but the most powerful moment came when the speaker asked everyone to honor the queen who raised these 5 amazing women. The entire crowd rose, giving Clara a 5-minute standing ovation. "You are not just a mother," the speaker said. "You are a queen mother." A year after the wedding, Clara received the best news of her life. All 5 daughters were pregnant. They gave birth in the same year, and Clara became a grandmother to 6 beautiful babies. Sophia had twins, a boy and a girl, and named the little girl Clara. Today, Clara lives in her beautiful haven, surrounded by the love of her 5 successful daughters and 6 grandchildren. The house is always full of laughter. People visit from all over to hear her story, asking for her secret. And Clara's answer is always simple yet profound. "Love is the only thing you need," she says. "When you love children with your whole heart, they grow wings and fly higher than the sky." The woman who was once called empty by the world became the most important person in the lives of 6 children. She proved that sometimes God's greatest blessings come in packages nobody else wants. The 5 little girls that nobody wanted became 5 queens who changed their world, all because one woman decided that love was stronger than fear. If this story touched your heart, share it. Which of Clara's daughters' journeys inspired you the most? Let us know in the comments. The years at Clara's Haven were painted in the warm, vibrant colors of family. The 6 grandchildren, little Clara, her twin brother Leo, and their 4 cousins, filled the spacious house with a joyful chaos that was music to Clara's ears. She loved watching them splash in the pool, their laughter echoing the sounds her own daughters had once made in their tiny apartment. The legacy of Clara's love seemed to multiply with each new generation. Sophia, ever the strategist, used her wealth to establish the Haven Foundation, a non-profit dedicated to supporting foster children and aspiring young entrepreneurs. She often brought her children to the foundation's events, teaching them that success wasn't just about wealth, but about lifting others up. Maya, after a celebrated career on the global football stage, retired and returned to Avalon Bay to coach the city's youth team. Her drills were tough, but her philosophy was pure. Clara, it's not just about winning the game. It's about believing you can, even when no one else does. Her own son, a lanky boy with his mother's determined eyes, was her star player. Isla and Ivy, the twin pillars of healing, opened a community health center together. The Twin Lights Clinic, as it was called, provided top-tier medical care to everyone, regardless of their ability to pay. Isla's compassionate leadership and Ivy's surgical brilliance made it a beacon of hope in the city. Their children, often found doing homework in the waiting room after school, were already debating whether to become doctors or nurses. Dahlia, whose voice could silence a courtroom or fill a cathedral, used her fame for advocacy. She launched a nationwide campaign for children in the welfare system, her powerful anthems becoming the soundtrack for legislative change. Her daughter, the youngest of the grandchildren, had already inherited her mother's vocal cords and could often be heard singing alongside her in the studio. One crisp autumn evening, the entire family had gathered at the Haven for a weekly dinner. The table was loud and crowded, filled with the clatter of plates and the overlapping stories of 5 families woven into one. Little Clara, now 7, sat on her grandmother's lap, playing with the simple silver locket Clara always wore, a gift from her daughters on the day they gave her the house. "Mimi," little Clara asked, using the name all the grandchildren had adopted, "what's inside the locket?" Clara smiled, a soft, faraway look in her eyes. She gently clicked it open. Inside wasn't a picture, but a tiny, folded piece of lined paper, yellowed with age. "It's a secret," Clara whispered, her voice barely audible over the dinner chaos. "Tell me, please," her granddaughter pleaded. Clara looked around the table, at Sophia debating stocks with her husband, Maya demonstrating a footwork technique with a bread roll, the twins discussing a complex medical case, and Dahlia leading the grandchildren in a silly song. Her heart swelled, so full she thought it might burst. She unfolded the delicate paper carefully. On it, in her own shaky handwriting from over 2 decades ago, was a single sentence, written the night she brought 5 terrified girls home. "My family begins here." 5 souls to fill the silence. She showed it to her granddaughter. "I wrote this when I was very sad and very scared," Clara explained. "I put it in the locket to remind me of my promise. That even if it was hard, I would fill my life with love." Just then, Dahlia's voice rose above the din as she started a familiar, beloved gospel hymn. One by one, her sisters joined in, their voices harmonizing perfectly. Then the grandchildren joined, their small, earnest voices adding to the chorus. The husbands clapped in time, and the entire room vibrated with music and love. Clara closed the locket, the secret safe once more. She didn't need a piece of paper to remember her promise anymore. The proof was all around her, living and breathing, laughing and singing. The silence had been filled long ago, replaced by a legacy of love that would echo for generations to come. She held her granddaughter close, knowing that the greatest story she ever told wasn't one she read from a book in the library, but one she had lived, and one that was still being written in the joyful noise of her home. The music faded into a comfortable quiet as the grandchildren, exhausted from the day's excitement, began to doze off on couches and in parents' laps. The adults moved to the spacious veranda overlooking the moonlit bay, cradling cups of tea and coffee. A comfortable silence settled over them, broken only by the rhythmic crash of waves below. It was Ivy, usually the most reserved of the sisters, who spoke into the stillness. "Mama," she began, her voice soft. "We've never really asked about before." All eyes turned to Clara. The before was a shadowy, understood part of their history, the divorce, the loneliness, the yearning. But they had been so focused on their own journey from the shelter to the present that they had rarely ventured into the specifics of their mother's past pain. Clara took a slow sip of her tea, the warmth seeping into her hands. She looked at the faces of her daughters, these powerful, incredible women she had raised, and saw not pity, but a deep, mature curiosity. "What do you want to know, my dears?" she asked. Was there ever a moment, Maya asked, her athletic frame leaning forward, when you thought you couldn't do it? When you almost gave up? A sad, knowing smile touched Clara's lips. There was a winter, she said, her gaze drifting to the dark horizon. It was the first winter you were all with me. The pipes in the apartment froze. We had no hot water for a week. Sophia had the flu, and Dahlia was teething and cried all night. I was working extra hours at the library to pay for medicine, and I was so tired I once fell asleep standing in the stacks. She paused, the memory vivid. One evening, I was heating water on the stove for a bath, bucket by bucket. The apartment was cold, everyone was miserable, and I just started to cry. I sat on the kitchen floor and sobbed. I thought, they were right. I am crazy. I can't do this. The sisters exchanged glances, their own memories of that small, warm, chaotic apartment flooding back. They had never known. What happened? Isla whispered, her nurse's heart aching for the woman her mother had been. Clara's smile returned, brighter this time. Little Maya, you couldn't have been more than 8. You came out of the bedroom, saw me on the floor, and you didn't say a word. You went and got a towel, dunked it in the warm water, and started wiping my face. Then Sophia, even with a fever, brought me a blanket. Isla and Ivy, you started singing one of those silly songs you made up. And Dahlia, you just stopped crying and looked at me with those big, serious eyes. She looked at each of them, her love for them a tangible force in the night air. In that moment, on that cold floor, I wasn't a failure. I was just your mama, having a hard moment. And you were my daughters, showing me how to be strong. You taught me that family isn't about one person being the strong one all the time. It's about taking turns. A collective sigh seemed to move through the group. It was a piece of the puzzle they never knew was missing. And, him? Sophia asked, her voice carefully neutral. Our father. Clara's expression softened. He wasn't a villain, she said, to their surprise. He was a man who wanted a very specific kind of life, and I couldn't give it to him. The words he said were cruel, but they came from his own pain and disappointment. I forgave him a long time ago. His path led him elsewhere, and his path, she said, sweeping her hand to encompass all of them and the house and the sleeping grandchildren, led me directly to you. I wouldn't change a single step. The truth of her words settled over them, not as a bitter history, but as a simple, accepted fact. The hurt was part of the foundation, but it wasn't what the house was built on. Love was. Dahlia reached out and took her mother's hand. That secret in the locket, she said. It was your promise to us. And you kept it, Isla added, her voice thick with emotion. No, Clara corrected gently, squeezing Dahlia's hand. We kept it. Together. From inside, a sleepy cry echoed. Little Clara had woken up. Mimi, she called out. Clara rose, her movements still graceful. Duty calls, she said, her eyes twinkling. As she walked back into the brightly lit house, her 5 daughters watched her go, their understanding of their mother, and the incredible tapestry of their own story, deepened and made whole. The past was no longer a ghost, it was the soil from which their mighty family tree had grown. And the future, filled with the sound of a new generation calling for Mimi, was brighter than all the stars over Avalon Bay. The cry wasn't one of distress, but a simple, sleepy summons. Clara found her namesake standing in the middle of the living room, rubbing her eyes, surrounded by her sleeping cousins. The sight was a mirror of another time, another group of little girls huddled together for safety. I had a dream, Mimi, little Clara murmured, allowing her grandmother to scoop her up. Did you, my love? Was it a good dream? Clara asked, carrying her back towards the veranda. It was about a big, noisy boat, the child said, her head resting on Clara's shoulder. And lots of water. A subtle shift occurred on the veranda. The 5 sisters, still warmed by their mother's revelations, now went perfectly still. The big, noisy boat was an unspoken specter in their family history. The ferry accident that took their birth parents was a tragedy they knew of, but like their mother's past, it was a chapter whose details remained closed. They had never pressed. Their life with Clara was so complete, the before felt like a separate, faded story. But now, a 7-year-old was dreaming of boats. Clara felt the weight of the silence from her daughters. She sat down, settling little Clara on her lap, wrapping a nearby blanket around them both against the cool night air. "The ferry," Maya said softly, the word hanging in the air like mist. Clara nodded, looking out at the dark water of the bay, where the lights of modern, safe ferries glided in the distance. "It was called the Sea Maiden," she began, her voice low and steady. "It was an old boat, and there was a storm that came in faster than anyone predicted." The sisters leaned in, a silent, captivated audience. They had never heard this. They knew the fact of the accident, but not the story. "The news report said it was quick," Clara continued, her hand automatically stroking her granddaughter's hair. "That everyone on board was lost. Your parents were coming back from a holiday on the offshore islands." She paused, choosing her words with the care of someone handling fragile glass. "The people at the shelter told me they were very much in love. That they loved all of you very, very much." This was a new piece of the puzzle, a gentle one. Clara had always made sure the girls knew their first parents were not the ones who had abandoned them, they were victims of a tragedy. "Is that why we were at the sad place?" Sophia asked, her voice that of the businesswoman, seeking facts, but with a tremor of the little girl she once was. "Yes," Clara said. "There was no one else. The family that was left, they were overwhelmed. They saw 5 little girls and saw a burden. I saw you, and I saw a family." Little Clara, half asleep, snuggled deeper. "I'm glad you found us, Mimi." The simple, profound statement broke the lingering solemnity. Dahlia let out a soft, tearful laugh. "We all are, sweetheart." Ivy, the surgeon, always precise, looked at her mother. "Did it hurt you, Mama? To take us in, knowing our story? Knowing we came from such a great loss?" Clara considered this. "The loss was the reason you needed me," she said finally. "But it wasn't the reason I loved you. I loved you the moment I saw you huddled on that sofa. Your past was a part of you, but it didn't define you to me. It just made me want to give you a future filled with so much joy, it would help soften the edges of that old, deep sadness." The revelation was healing, a final balm on a wound they hadn't fully acknowledged was still there. They had been wanted twice over, first by the parents who were taken from them, and then, fiercely and unconditionally, by the mother who chose them. As if on cue, the other grandchildren began to stir, the spell of sleep broken. The veranda was soon filled with the renewed energy of children, the heavy moment passing into the gentle flow of a family night. Later, as the last car pulled away and the house was finally quiet, Clara stood by the large window, the locket cool in her hand. She thought of the 2 sets of parents, the ones lost to the sea, and the one who had lost her way. She thought of the 5 souls she had been given, and the 6 new ones they had brought into the world. The story wasn't just about a woman who saved 5 girls. It was about 5 girls who, in their own way, had saved her right back. And now, the story was continuing, in the dreams of a child, in the quiet understanding between sisters, in the legacy of a love that was chosen, day after day, for a lifetime. The waves on the shore below whispered of endings and beginnings, and Clara listened, content, knowing her own story was woven into theirs, forever.